understanding, practice, and certification. Faith, what I often hear in the Western world, in the English-speaking world, is that faith is not a requirement to Buddhism. That Buddhism is about doubting, it's about observing, it's not a religion. That's true. So much of it is true, that Buddhism is not a typical religion where we claim that we believe, therefore we are Buddhists. But we act a certain way, we be a certain, therefore we are Buddhists. Some people who don't proclaim themselves Buddhists per se have very much Buddhist behaviors. They keep certain disciplines, they are people who are aware, alert, and who are kind. Those are very much a Buddhist-like person, although they don't necessarily proclaim themselves to be Buddhist. It's possible, I think, to find Buddhists in every tradition of faith and or of non-faith. Some people would argue only when you have taken the refuge with the Triple Jewel, then you are officially a Buddhist. Just like when you get married, you go through a ceremony and you get a certificate. There are both sides of this. How do you actually proclaim yourself a Buddhist with the refuges, but then I act a certain way? Or is it that I don't have any associations with Buddhists per se, but I am a certain way? Probably, ideally, the two would be best being integrated, because proclivity of Westerners tend to be, we don't need a piece of paper to tell us what we are. And I know I can keep the precepts, meditate, I can read the text all on my own. I don't need other people. That actually resonates quite a bit with Buddhist teachings in some ways. On the other hand, there are additional teachings by the Buddha that teach us that it's important to have other people who practice like you. And we also know that as part of having gone through a ritual, that it makes a difference for some people. With all precepts, it's important not to miss the spirit of it, because the precepts were actually created when the Buddhist students who weren't perfect, and yet they became students of the Buddha and who took the vows as transgression. Well, they're not even transgressions because there had not been any precepts for them to transgress. But as problems occurred, then the Buddha established the precepts. And so, for example, the precept against killing, that one actually began because a student of the Buddha wanted to commit suicide. So that's when the Buddha established the precept prohibiting killing. It wasn't that people were eating meat. How the precepts were actually established, and then the ramifications that would result in our daily living, having understood the intent behind the precepts. Having understood, the Buddha established the precept against killing because a student was about to take his life. But then we understand how precious life is. With that, we wouldn't want to take our own lives or others' lives or other beings' lives. That's the application of the spirit of the law. It just depends on how widely and how finely you would apply the understanding of the precept. So precept is not a either-or thing at all. What I've learned is that it's a constant refinement. When you talk about gossip or harsh language. Gossip and harsh language seems so petty to us. It's all okay, but for someone who has been fine-tuning their speech, the little grains of bumps along a smooth surface are felt especially. It's a lifelong practice, constantly adjusting your lifestyle so that it's attuned with the precepts, but it's always a balance. People who are righteous about keeping precepts, keep perfect precepts. Does that? Nobody. If you're not the Buddha. Extremely difficult to keep perfect precepts. And yet, at a certain level, too, it's very clear that there's been a violation. Precepts are really wonderful because it actually requires that we are constantly aware of ourselves, our own, not only actions, our speech, but our thought. So when it becomes real refined, it's not just about what we do outwardly and what we actually comes out of our mouth, but even our own thought. It's difficult to keep. Your authentic self is the perfect self. There's already perfection there, but the precepts isn't about, it shouldn't be, and there are too many should when people talk about precepts. It's not about looking at, where we failed. It's about an awareness, and then knowing that these are certain standards, we can go there to check and see how we're doing, but it's not meant to be you are no good, you gossiped today and you said something harsh today. That creates or aggravates the sense of hatred towards ourselves, or maybe hatred is too strong of a word, but inner critic, which too many Westerners have. Or maybe just that Westerners talk about them, because people in Asia don't talk about how they have an inner critic, and they don't say they have an inner critic. If we observe ourselves, maybe it's because of our inner critic that we look at the precepts from a certain perspective, and then we look at the precepts as a way to put ourselves down, fault ourselves, rather than as looking at them as ideals to strive for and as another resource that would aid us as we go towards levels of advancement. I like the idea of how precepts and mindfulness and wisdom are very much together. Without wisdom, you wouldn't know when to be expedient.
There's more than one definition of faith, and lots of Westerners associate it with blind.
It's said that when we encounter the teachings and we have a deep faith, believing it and delighting in it, that's something that we ought to be grateful for, because not everyone has it. Some people have it to a tremendous degree, and some people have it sometimes, and then sometimes not, and some people don't have it at all. So, for me, I think that I have faith in the Buddhist teachings. Faith only continues when I actually question it and try it out and see, does this really work the way that it says? If it does, then it strengthens my faith. If it doesn't, I ask more questions. Faith is not kind of faith that just requires a one-time commitment and it's over, but it's a continual process. For me, faith itself can also oftentimes run thin when it comes to Buddhist organization. To me, the most important thing to have faith about is the Dharma. In this particular text, the faith that's required here, obviously, is believing the teachings in this sutra. In the first chapter, as it begins with introducing many different types of beings, all these different beings from all different realms who are the lord of their own domain. For those who read it, who are these beings? There's no way for them to delve any deeper into it. From the start, it certainly requires faith enough for you to want to continue to look deeper into this text, into the teachings that are provided in this text. Just enough faith to get us over this hump, the next hump.